You got that right.
The hell does that mean?
I remember that vividly. It's such a ridiculous scene.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Julia, you've had such a wide range of comedic experiences, obviously a multicam sitcom and political satire and feature-length films. And this is a big question, but I want to talk about, as a comedian, how an audience affects your delivery of a joke. The difference between having a live studio audience and not.
I've yada-yada'd sex.
Really?
Yeah. I met this lawyer, we went out to dinner, I had the lobster bisque, we went back to my place, yada, yada, yada. I never heard from him again.
When you're delivering a line that you know is great and you know is funny, what's the difference in how you deliver that line or that joke when the audience is right in front of you, or when you know that they're going to be in a theater a few months later, like with this film?
When you're performing in front of a live audience, it's a completely different beast, because they're a part of the performance. The pace of performance is completely altered because you have to do something called holding for laughs, or at least you should do that. And then when you're doing comedic work without an audience in the room with you, that is a different rhythm. That's just comedy rhythm minus the response. And of course, in that case, you're also very much relying on an editor to be able to put it together properly. But I've done films that were funny, and then you screen them for an audience, and they're laughing over a couple jokes. And when that happens, I often think, quiet!
You're missing bits.
Yeah, exactly.
I should have held.
My George isn't clever enough to hatch a scheme like this.
You got that right.
The hell does that mean?
There is a blooper from Seinfeld that makes the rounds on social media probably once a month. And it's the sort of thing where if it pops up, I stop what I'm doing and watch it, because I know no matter how many times I've seen it, it's going to laugh. And it's you and the great Mr. Stiller when he says, you want a piece of me.
You're saying you want a piece of me?
And I'm just sort of curious if you remember that moment and why you think it is that's the blooper that, for some reason, once a month, it goes everywhere.
Yeah, I remember that vividly, it's such a ridiculous scene, and it was so impossible for me to get through that scene with the wonderful Jerry. Even when I watch it now, I start laughing the same way I was laughing then.
What the hell does that?
It is undeniably hilarious, and he was the greatest man in the world.
You want a piece of me? You got it!
I know everyone's talking about the concept of bad reviews, but I guess we all grow up hearing that you hear what you stay away from the comment section, and you know that if you're going to put art out there in the world, that you're going to be opening yourself up to negative reviews and criticism. But I am curious, over your careers, what has been the most helpful bad review you've ever gotten, where you were able to actually take something from it and maybe learn something about yourself and move forward?
I haven't really learned anything from a bad review per se, but I have learned how to navigate reviews in general, be they bad or good. Which is to not give them too much weight.
Yeah, either way.
Either way, yeah. Because if you're not going to weight the bad ones,
you can't then be like...
Yeah, to the good ones, yeah.
I do think that often I've learned more from my failures than from successes, that, when something doesn't work, it often does cut a lot deeper and it can be very uncomfortable, but it's when something more growthful happens, so yeah.
Well, I had a great audience and a packed audience here in Chicago. And so on that note, I do want to circle back to the idea of lessons learned, because whenever I was walking out of the theater, I was listening to a lot of maybe eavesdropping on a lot of couples who were having conversations and taking things from your relationship and going, you see, I told you because she said this, or another person would say, see, I told you he said that. And that's what I was saying. And I'm fascinated with, as someone who loves film, I'm fascinated with the idea of learning life lessons from movies. And I am curious if that works for you guys. Have you ever learned a life lesson from a character you've played or from a project that you've been a part of, where you performed a moment and then paused and went, that's actually a pretty good point?
I do think that I go to the theatre and I watch films and television partly to look at different ways of living. It is a kind of existential exercise for me. It's not purely entertainment. I'm interested in how people deal with different situations, and I suppose that's maybe why I'm drawn to the writing of someone like Nicole, because I think it's really rooted in a lot of reality.
Yeah, and I would just add to that by saying I don't think of it as life lessons so much, but sort of when you play a part, you're really sort of getting in the skin of things. So you sort of, you're absorbing ideas, right, as you're working, and maybe almost unbeknownst to you.
Guys, I cannot stress to you enough how much I love this movie, how much I loved it here in Chicago. I got to see it in a packed theater of people who just responded to it. And it was a beautiful moment. And I just thank you for making movies like this. And please continue to make movies like this. And I really appreciate your time.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful day.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.